Welcome back to the Career Catharsis podcast. I'm your host, Neha Korem. Today, I'll be chatting with the exceptionally talented Junette Caloroso, who goes by June. Based in the San Francisco Bay Area, June is a fellow career coach, helping job seekers ramp up their job search strategy to make the right career moves. Stay tuned for a discussion on LinkedIn hacks and other great career insights. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Career Catharsis Show, June. So excited to be chatting with you about your venture, Build with June.
And yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, Neha, onto your podcast. Thank you.
Of course. So I would love for listeners to know what exactly sparked your interest in career coaching and how you got to where you are.
Yes, great question. So the majority of the past 6 years, I have been building teams for some of the best tech companies in the industry, from tech giants like Google to unicorn startups like Wish. I've also just recently landed a new role as a business recruiter for a great startup called Thumbtack. But prior to my new role here at Thumbtack, as many of millions have experienced, I was actually one of the millions of people that have lost their jobs back from April because of COVID, because of this pandemic. And prior to my layoff, I've always had an interest of career coaching, just because in the recruiting world, one of the best things that I love in my position is I love prepping my candidates for interviews, as well as, I mean, you could probably speak to this too, Neha, because you have that experience too in the recruiter chair. After viewing and reviewing thousands and thousands of resumes, I know what really stands out when it comes to like having a very compelling resume or LinkedIn profile. So when I did get laid off, before I started even thinking about what was next for me in my career, I wanted to really take that time to do a little bit of self-discovery, some soul searching. And I knew that, my children, I have two young children that were transitioning into a virtual learning environment. So I really wanted to be there for them. So instead of actually going into a job search right away with my layoff, I wanted to just kind of reinvest in myself. And everyone now is talking about the importance of personal branding, right? And prior to my layoff, I had no personal brand on LinkedIn. I didn't know what a personal brand was. And then bam, my layoff happened. And I took that time just to do some soul searching, and then got a little bit of playful with like content creation on Instagram and YouTube. I started doing what I did best as a recruiter. I started interviewing people in my network, asking them, how they have been dealing with this pandemic. What are they learning from this pandemic? How are they, if they had some businesses, how are they transitioning their business to a virtual setting? So I did what I did best as a recruiter. I just started interviewing people for like a passion project.
Yeah.
And then Neha, people started asking me for help with their resumes or interviewing, just because I've always been that go-to person, anything career related. So then I had my aha moment saying, I have a passion of helping people in their careers. There's a huge problem of unemployment. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn this passion of helping people into a business. So I officially launched my career coaching business. I want to say sometime in July, August, I think. Yeah.
That's super bold to be starting a business during a pandemic, after a layoff, and it's not something that you planned. It's just something that you fell into. So kudos to you for just, making that happen. And I've been following your journey pretty closely on LinkedIn. And, I saw that you recently had an interview with Andrew Seaman, and, he's been doing some really great work with his newsletter on how to get hired. So I think you've just been such an excellent resource for people that are looking for their next career move, particularly at a time where, either there's people who are unhappy with their job and they almost feel guilty. So when I talk to people that are looking for a new job and they seem to have a stable setup, they're like, I feel guilty. There's so many people that are unemployed right now. Like, should I be making this move? And if anyone is on the line listening and they're feeling that way, I just want to say, you're allowed to not enjoy your job and you're allowed to go after something better. It doesn't matter what else is going on, really. Like, you have to do what's best for you at the end of the day, and you're not taking away something from someone else by, going after what you want. If anything, you're then opening up a spot at the company you're at for someone who would like that job a lot more. Right. But with all of that in mind, June, I just wanted to tap into your experience working with tech companies. You've worked for Google, you've worked for Wish, and now you more recently have this opportunity with Thumbtack. What is your advice around candidates that are in tech that are looking to make their next move, given, there's just been so much change and people are sort of afraid of maybe going after startups, seeing as there's instability? Like, what is your advice there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the majority of the clients that I work with have either, had an interest of going into tech but don't know where to start, or majority of my candidates actually have that non-traditional background that wants to get into tech. Honestly, like, I think the biggest thing is really try to understand where your transferable skills lay in. For example, one of my clients that just actually recently landed her first job in a tech company came from retail banking, and really wanted to get into a customer success role at a tech startup. So what I always say is, before you start building your resume or LinkedIn profile, get a clear understanding of the different positions and industries that you are passionate about, and then take an inventory check of your skills in your current role to see if there's any transferable skills. So for example, as a business banker, as a someone in retail and customer service, what tech companies are really looking for is those strong communication skills, right? That strong project management skills. If you're detail oriented, a lot of transferable skills from that retail experience. So when you're looking at your resume and you're looking at the roles that you want to apply in to tech, try to see where there are some commonalities and transferable skills, and then rebrand yourself to really match that job description that you're applying for. I think it's really important before you even start looking for a new job is really, like, again, take an inventory check of your skills, understand where your unique skills and superpowers are in, and then start networking. I always say, like, it's going to take a lot more than just applying to one of your dream tech companies. You're going to have to put your networking shoes on and start networking on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn, I always say this too, is such an underutilized platform. Job seekers just look at it as a way just to apply for new jobs. They're not actually looking at it as a resource to learn different trends or different strategies to stand out as candidates. They don't look at it as a resource to connect with people that are in the industries that you want to be in. So it's like, think of it as, like, I always say this, it's like the yellow book pages, directory.
Yeah, for real.
Basically, you can look up anyone. For example, if you want to pivot into like from customer service into marketing, you can easily go on LinkedIn and try to find some people that have worked in your previous companies that were in non-technical fields, and see how they pivoted into the tech world by having informative chats through LinkedIn.
Yeah, I love that, looking at LinkedIn as more than just a job board, and looking at it for its potential in terms of networking, reaching out to people, but also doing a bit of stalking. I think there's lots of people on the line who might be doing that on Facebook for, their personal reasons. But you know what? This is such a useful skill to have in terms of professional, information gathering and data mining, and just making some intelligent decisions about who do I want to reach out to, who do I want to learn from. But you can tell so much even before you get on a call or speak to someone, just by looking at their trajectory, as you mentioned. So really great insight there. And do you have any other tips for job seekers when it comes to standing out for a role in tech? I mean, we talked about rebranding, but what else can people do to really stand out for tech companies in particular?
Well, a lot of tech companies now, especially now, just because 2020 hit us, we didn't see it coming. And one of the biggest things that hiring managers are looking for when they're hiring for their team, particularly in tech companies, are candidates that are going to bring new ideas to the table. Are they going to be able to work through adversity? Are they going to be able to, think on their feet? A lot of the hiring managers that I've worked with in the past are always looking for candidates that have that entrepreneurial mindset. So my biggest tip too is when it comes to like personal branding and how to stand out as a job seeker, try, for the positions that you're applying for on any job board, try to understand what the company is trying to solve. What is their mission? What is their value proposition to their customers? And try to understand their pain points and then try to present a solution. For example, what you could really do, this is actually someone that I've interviewed on my LinkedIn live show. He really wanted to pivot it from HR into marketing, okay, and into it for a tech company. He didn't have that marketing experience, but what he did is he did like a Loom audit of a company's landing page on their website and gave his marketing strategy, like some kind of feedback to do. So my biggest tip is think outside of the box. Be proactive versus reactive. I think it's really one of the first things last week I received my first video cover resume. No, video cover letter.
Wow.
It was like a 2-minute pitch. Yeah. And I thought it was really unique. So you really have to think about outside of the box when it comes to like standing out for tech or any position, because you have to think about it. You're competing with hundreds or maybe thousands of people for the same role. So you really got to you just got to be experimental.
Yeah, I really like that idea of, being experimental, and a tool that you mentioned, Loom. A lot of people already know about it, but if you don't know about it, it's LOOM. And I believe you can make a free account, and essentially you can do screen recordings. You can, change the background. You can do some really cool stuff and create these, videos that you can then send as either a video resume or a video cover letter. I mean, so many cool things you can do with that. And then something else you mentioned there, June, is companies, particularly tech companies, are looking for candidates that are really going to be intrapreneurs. I mean, we think about entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial mindset, builders essentially, but when you're working with teams and internally, you just flip the E to an I, and really the context around that is someone that can build with teammates and cross-functionally. So I think a lot of tech companies value that. And I'm just wondering if somebody is pivoting from a non-tech company to a tech company. You mentioned, there's transferable skills and you can do some rebranding, but can you kind of highlight, like, what does that rebrand look like? And, sometimes people are like, oh, but I want people to know that I've done X, Y, Z, and like they're married to this story of the past that might not necessarily translate to where they're headed. So what would you say on that note?
Yeah, I think it's also too, like, again, like understanding what your transferable skills are. And then again, like I said, do an inventory check and see what's missing as far as skills. And there's a lot of great resources. For example, you could I think Google just announced that they're doing workshops through Coursera, I believe.
Oh, wow.
That you can get certified in like project management or social media. So these are the different courses that you can use to rebrand yourself. Like, so for example, if you want to pivot into a new industries, but lack the actual degree or certifications, there's a lot of accelerator programs and boot camps. For example, one of the clients that I work with is a boot camp called Level Up in Tech. And they specialize on certification in DevOps engineering. Some of the students that I've worked with that have attended my LinkedIn workshop rebranded themselves from being a police officer in law enforcement into a DevOps engineer. And they knew that they really wanted to get into tech, but lacked the credentials and degree. So you don't have to, like, if you're thinking about pivoting into a completely new industry, but lack the actual resources or finances, there's so many affordable boot camps, accelerated programs, online courses that you can take to re-educate yourself, rebrand yourself to get into the industry and companies that you want to be in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great strategy. I think, having those online resources, like you mentioned, and accelerator programs is a great way to at least get something on the resume, but also re-educate yourself, right? And really get a better understanding. I think so much of it is just the language, right? Once you're
Mhm.
introduced to the language of a particular domain and being able to speak to that in an interview is such a game changer. It also helps you read job descriptions better and understand what the requirements are rather than guessing and not really understanding like what role you're applying to and just having a version of a job in your head. I feel like that's also something that happens when people are trying to pivot, and there's just a lot of mystery that I think, once you kind of get a sense of the education piece, it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be pricey. It can do so much. So thanks for that insight.
Yeah, I just also want to add too,
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I mentioned this too. Like, I talked about networking, but
Mm-hmm.
networking with people that have made the pivot, from your current
Mm-hmm.
situation, and asking them guidance and help, right? Also want to add too, I mean, this too as a recruiter, especially too in the tech space, these tech companies are paying thousands of dollars to their employees
Mm-hmm.
for employee bonus referrals. So
Yeah.
I know it could be intimidating for people to reach out to other people on LinkedIn to network, but think about it. Like, there's over 740 million people on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
If someone says no to you for a networking chat, move on to the next person, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think referrals are an untapped area for a lot of people, even just starting with your own network or friends
Mhm.
of friends, maybe someone that you went to college a long time ago, they might still be open to referring you. So, really tapping into your warm connections is a great way to see if someone will refer you because, as you mentioned, companies have a really big incentive to go ahead and interview a referral because it's a trusted network. Um, and you're much more likely to receive an interview and much more likely to receive a job when you go through the referral route. Another
Mhm.
piece to that is sometimes candidates will get so excited and apply for a job and miss out on the referral link. So it's so important to just, tap whoever it is that you know at a company to see if they'll refer you first and hold off on applying. Of course, speed also matters, but just kind of balancing that to make sure that the recruiting team there is going to honor the referral before you apply and, cut your chances. So really key piece there. Is there any other advice that you would give around referrals, whether it's approaching them or any other maybe recruiter tips and tricks?
Yeah, I think also too, a lot of people wait until the job of their dreams is posted online and then
Oh
they start
yeah.
networking. So taking the reactive approach. I always say be proactive. Like, yes, like say if you have a dream company in mind, but you don't see any jobs that are actually of interest, don't wait until there's a job that's posted. Like, I would start building
Yeah.
those relationships now. And then the biggest thing too is like when you are reaching out to people on LinkedIn, like you said, make sure you stalk them or review their profile.
Yeah.
See if there's any common interests, commonalities, common mutual connections.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it could be a little bit scary, like reaching out to them and asking for a coffee chat. But I always say, like, before you even reach out to them on LinkedIn, see if they actually post on LinkedIn, see their
Mm.
activity feed, see if they actually post articles or
Oh
share
yeah.
different insights for the company and start commenting and engaging in their posts because that's building that relationship, building that
Mm-hmm.
rapport. So when you are confident and comfortable to reach out, you can say, "Hey, Neha, I saw that you've actually like you shared an article on
Yeah.
LinkedIn last week, helping job seekers break into tech. I really love the advice that you shared. Would you be open to having a networking call with me? Would
Mm-hmm.
love to seek advice." So that's a tip right there.
Yeah, I love that. And, something you touched on around the activity feed. So, a lot of the times, candidates that I work with, coaching them on their job search, they'll reach out and they'll be like, Neha, I'm listening to you. I reached out to 10 people, but I haven't heard anything. And I'm like, well, are they active on LinkedIn? And, that's where you have to go to the activity history and see, anyone's activity history. I believe, you can view the past 90 days, any posts or likes that they have. And if you don't see anything, if it's crickets, then they're probably just not logging into LinkedIn. And you might want to try their email if you have it,
Mhm.
or, some people have gotten really clever at guessing emails as well. But again, you just have to tread lightly, on that. Um,
Yeah,
But
there was actually, I want to share, there's hunter.iao. That's
oh
the
yes.
email. And then there's another one. I have to think about it. But there's different email tools that can help you identify their work address, email
Yeah,
address.
hunter.io is a great resource, particularly for tech candidates that are looking to organize their job search and
Yeah.
look for new jobs. Really great resource there. Shifting more towards your personal career, June. So, thinking about a highlight of your career, what would you say has been a really great moment?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, okay. Let me see. I mean, launching my business is
Of
probably one of
course.
my highlights,
Yeah.
especially too from 2020, because I was able to do all of the things I wanted to do for
Hmm.
previous tech companies, but I'm doing it for my brand and my business, and I'm following my passion. But that's one of my biggest highlights, is actually doing all of these great things and helping job seekers land their dream jobs. I'm facilitating workshops. So I've always wanted to be a teacher.
Oh, love
And
it.
I get to do
That's so
that
funny. Me
virtually.
too.
Really? And you do
I'm
workshops
not
too.
kidding. Well, you know
I know.
what? I just think coaching is pretty much teaching, right? So I'm not too surprised, but yeah, it's just sort of like living your dream in a different way, right?
Exactly.
Love
I think
it.
that's my biggest highlight. And then also too, just because like I have worked at larger tech companies, like I
Mm-hmm.
contracted at Google, which was a great experience. It gave me my first taste of the tech world. But honestly, I really enjoy building startups. I love working at
Mm.
tech startups. My one of my highlights is when I did work at Wish. That was my first startup experience, just because it's a lot more impactful. I was actually hiring people that I saw in the office.
Yeah.
Um, so, and then just kind of really building brand awareness at a new company really excites me. So I'm really excited about my new role as a recruiter for this startup that I'm working at Thumbtack. But yeah, those are some of my career highlights there.
Love it. Yeah, I think there is a lot to appreciate when you are one of the founding members of a company and the kind of impact you have. And I would say, what you see in a year even sometimes feels like, 10 years worth of decisions and, interactions kind of rolled into one. So it's just such a great learning experience. Um, and thinking about your motivation and what keeps you going and what makes you happy, what's something that you can share around that?
Yeah, I think for me, my biggest motivation too is like my family and my children. I really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure that, 2020 was a big lesson for all of us. And it was the first time where I felt like, so when 2020 happened, I felt like, how do I say this? I went through some depression and anxiety, just because
Mm-hmm.
we tie so much of our identity to our careers.
Yeah.
So when that happened, I realized we are so much more than our careers.
Mm-hmm.
We are daughters, we are wives, we are sisters, we are, parents, right?
Yeah.
And for me, my biggest motivation is I wanted to build like a legacy and a business that my children will be proud of five,
Mm-hmm.
10 years from now, right? So even though I'm still considered a startup
Yeah.
with Build with June,
Yeah.
this is something long term, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
grateful that my new job is going to give me the ability to build this side business. But my motivation is them. I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that they know that they are more than their jobs, like,
Mm-hmm.
and they could be successful on their own. You don't have to work for a company um, to be successful. So, and that was like the biggest lesson that 2020 has taught me.
Yeah, I love that. I think we saw so many first time entrepreneurs or, as
Mhm.
many people will call themselves solopreneurs. I think
Solopreneurs.
we've seen a whole wave of them, right? And I just think a complete shift in the idea of success and what you can achieve even just as a team of one, given all the tools and resources and even just this larger community. And I love collaborating with other coaches such as
Me
yourself.
too.
Like it just feels like there isn't even this idea of competition. It's more like a spirit of collaboration because really the world is kind of open to us in terms of the impact we can have, and everyone's just has something unique that they're offering that I think is so exciting, and we can all kind of lean into to. And yeah, I think, I would kind of want to close off on any other tips or advice that you may have for candidates that might be in between jobs or considering a move. What would be some final thoughts for them?
Yeah, my final thoughts is if you are considering to make a move and pivot to a new career and you are lacking, I don't know, the inspiration or the motivation, is if you can try to invest in yourself. Like if you can hire a coach to help guide
Yeah.
you, or if you don't, just really build your community. Find some accountability partners that are also in the job market, because job searching and looking for a new job can be lonely. And if you're gonna hit different walls. You're going to get rejected multiple times. So I think it's really important to really build your community and get some accountability partners to stay motivated. I always say too that, I love quotes. One of my favorite quotes is, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So please try to have a plan and strategy in place, try to come up with a routine. And then it's okay to take breaks in between your job search. Try to incorporate some self-care for you to really, work in yourself, your mindset, to help you overcome those limiting beliefs. But yeah, those are my last takeaways: is invest in yourself. Try to find some accountability partners. If you can, work with a coach. If not, there's so many free advice out there. Like me and you post free advice all the time.
Oh yeah.
On LinkedIn or Instagram. But you can only do so much learning, and that learning is not useful if you don't implement those teachings, right? So really make sure that you implement everything that you're learning online.
Yeah, having that bias for action, as many startups will post as one of their values. So I think that's such a great way to end things. I want to thank you, June, for all your insight and for being such an inspiration and being such a great resource for candidates and other coaches such as myself, and wishing you the best at Thumbtack.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Career Catharsis podcast with special guest Junette Caloroso. You can find more information on how to best connect with us in the show notes. We'd love to hear about your career struggles, triumphs, and goals. If you know someone looking for a job right now, be sure to share today's episode link and subscribe